Our next speaker is someone we all are extremely grateful for and appreciate so much. Every New Yorker needs to know what attorney Bobbie Anne Cox has done for our freedom. Bobbie Anne saw the danger of extreme overreach in our government and acted immediately by using her skills to file an historic lawsuit against the Governor Hochul and the Department of Health, and she won.
Hi everybody. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you for the introduction, George. Thank you for the introduction, Liz. So my name's Bobbie Anne Cox. I'm an attorney based down in Westchester County, so it's a really far drive. Anyway, I've been practicing law for about 25 years, and in March of 2020, when the King Cuomo told us to steal a phrase from Senator Borrello, told us to all lock down, and it's just going to be for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I was like, oh, no. Nothing, the government doesn't do anything for 2 weeks. And the reason I know that is because before bringing this lawsuit and being engulfed in the world of constitutional law and getting our freedoms back, I am a property tax certiorari attorney, which just means that I sue the government, I sue local government, towns, villages, counties, for just property valuations. So I represent property owners whose property taxes are too high. I argue against the municipalities, and then I get the property taxes lowered for a more fair value. So I've been dealing with government and suing the government for 20 years. So I knew how this was going to all roll out. So I started to speak out. I started to go to various freedom groups that were popping up around the state and giving speeches about what's constitutional, what's not, what are your rights. People had no idea. People were calling me, texting me, emailing me, saying, I don't know, am I supposed to close my business? Can I open my doors? Can I go to work? Am I going to get a fine? Am I going to go to jail? It was just complete chaos. And I saw this suffering. People were suffering so much, and it wasn't from the virus. They were suffering because they weren't allowed to live their lives. They were being told to stay in their house, not go to work, shutter their businesses, and nobody knew what to do. Kids couldn't go to school. College students were stuck home. It was just horrific to watch. So somebody brought to my attention this regulation, this isolation and quarantine procedures regulation last year, and I read it and I said, no way. There's no way I'm letting this stand. And I just said, I have to sue. And I had to take the approach from the legislatures, because the government, Hochul and the DOH, were not actually enforcing the regulation to lock people up into facilities. But what this regulation said, which Senator Borrello touched on, is they could pick and choose which New Yorkers they were going to lock up or lock down. So they could force you to stay in your home. They could remove you from your home and put you into a facility that they chose. They didn't have to prove you had a disease. They didn't have to prove you were exposed to a disease. They could tell you when you got out. They could tell you what you could and couldn't do while you were locked down or while you were in quarantine under their authoritarian rule. They could tell you what you could do and what you couldn't do. So what does that mean? Let's imagine for a moment. They could tell you, sorry, no cell phone. Sorry, no internet access. They could completely cut you off from the outside world. They could tell you what you could and couldn't eat. They could tell you what medications you could or couldn't take or had to take. So the broad language in this regulation was shocking to the conscience. They could use local law enforcement to carry out their order. They could come and knock on your door. The sheriff, the local police could come on, knock on your door and say, I'm sorry, you need to come with us. I have an order decree from the health department. Okay, so think about that. You know, Senator Borrello and I were doing a radio interview a couple weeks back, and he pointed out, think of all of the abuse that could happen with just that one phrase, right? Somebody in the health department could say, you know what, I don't like this guy that's dating my teenage daughter. You know what, I think he's got tuberculosis, which is on the list. So why don't we just lock him up for, I don't know, 6 months? I mean, it was unbelievable. It was dystopian. It was a nightmare, this regulation. So I started to draft this lawsuit, and I knew I needed some New York State legislators to jump on board because the injury was to them, which was usurping their power. And very thankfully, Liz Nixon, who I would like to really thank profoundly, because Liz is the person that put me in touch with Senator Borrello, and I was also in touch with Assemblyman Chris Tague and Assemblyman Mike Lawler, who also came on the lawsuit. And together, we sued successfully. We got that regulation struck down. Judge Ronald Ploetz, if anybody here knows him, please thank him for me. Judge Ronald Ploetz ruled in our favor. He said, unconstitutional, illegal, you cannot do this. You cannot make a regulation through the Department of Health that conflicts, number one, with the Constitution, and number two, with New York state law. We already have a law. It's 70 years old. We already have a law, and this was one of my main arguments. It says, yes, you can quarantine somebody if they're a public health threat. However, there is a list of due process protections built into that law to ensure that the government doesn't abuse the power. Number one on that list is they have to actually have the disease. Okay? Number two on the list is you get to have an investigation and you get to be defended by an attorney if you want. Right? There has to be a hearing in front of a magistrate. The magistrate has to find not only that you have the disease, but that you are a public health threat, meaning you're not conducting yourself in a proper manner. You're exposing other people unnecessarily. The law makes sense. It has due process built into it. This regulation came along, it overturned that law, it overrode that law, and an agency, which is unelected bureaucrats, unelected government employees, are not allowed to change the laws that are made by the legislature. That's not the way the Constitution works, and there's a reason for that. Because if we allowed agencies, which are unelected bureaucrats, to make rules that overturned laws that are made by our elected officials, you've now got tyranny. You've now got a branch of government. It's supposed to be co-equal with the other two, but now it's risen above because now they can overrule anything that the legislature does. So we can't have that. That's called separation of powers, and that is key. You know, our founding fathers wrote the Constitution. It's a brilliant document. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's brilliant. And the reason it's brilliant is because they came from tyranny. So they knew when they wrote that document, they had in their mind, we want to write this so that this tyranny that we're living under the King of England, will never happen here on these shores. Okay, but 250 years later, here we are, living under tyranny. Okay, so everybody needs to do something. You don't have to be a lawyer, and it doesn't matter if you're just one person. Everybody needs to step up. I'm going to close by just letting you know that I did an interview a couple weeks ago, and the person interviewing me put up on their screen a quote from JFK, which I hadn't heard before. And then next to the quote, she had a picture of JFK, and then she had, Andy's here. Oh, I have to add that in. Oh, hold on a second. She put a quote. She put a quote of I'm thrown off, JFK, and she put a picture of JFK, and next to the picture of JFK, she put a picture of me, and she's like, "Thank you." And the quote is really so powerful, so I'm going to share it. It says, one person can make a difference, and everybody should try. Yeah. So I was alone in this fight, as Senator Borrello mentioned. No other attorneys would come on this case with me. I can't tell you how many attorneys I asked. Come on, guys, we got to do this. We got to strike this down. This is unbelievable. And nobody wanted to do, you're going to lose. It's not a good argument. I'm not going to work for free. Why are you working for free? You're going to lose. You're going to lose your practice. You know, everybody was telling me, don't do it, and I'm not going to help you. And I have to say, I very thankfully did not listen to them. And you know, Dr. Paul Alexander asked me earlier, you know, you're this little petite thing, and you're like so like quiet and proper, you know, like how did you end up here, like defeating the governor, you know? And I was like, because I'm I might be little, but I'm a Spitfire, and I was not going to let that woman take away the absolute essence of freedom of every single person in this state. I knew that it wasn't just this state, because if it started in New York and we had quarantine camps in New York, it was going to soon spread. And then you would see it spread across the country, and then quarantine camps would become a new norm, a new normal way to fight communicable diseases. And I wasn't going to allow that to happen in the United States of America. So I just want to point out that there was one attorney who did believe in me and my case, and he's here today. It's Assemblyman, if everybody wants to turn around, Assemblyman Andy Goodell. I'd like everybody to stand up and please applaud. Andy Goodell is an attorney. He's the assemblyman in Chautauqua County. And Liz Nixon, again, fabulous Liz Nixon, connected me with Andy when I was trying to find some New York State senators and assemblymen to come on my lawsuit with me. And Andy read my lawsuit, and he believed in it, and he saw the value in it, and he saw the argument, and he understood where I was going with it. And thanks to Andy, he got Senator Borrello involved, and he got Assemblyman Chris Tague involved, and he got Assemblyman Mike Waller involved, and then he wrote a brilliant amicus brief, which the judge quotes part of it in his decision, and he got Assemblyman Joseph Giglio to sign on to the brief, and he got Assemblyman Will Barkley to sign on to the brief, who's the New York State Assembly minority leader. And so there was this fabulous amicus brief, and guess what the Attorney General did? She tried to keep it out of court, which is unheard of, really. And so Andy then had to start doing motion practice back and forth, fighting with the Attorney General's office about why his brief should be allowed in court. So that was a fun time working on that together. So anyway, so my point is that I wouldn't be standing here today, or if I would be standing here, it would have been probably a lot longer path for me to get this freedom for all of you and for all of us if it wasn't for Andy Goodell. So I want everybody to understand that and appreciate him. And I'm also going to say that Kathy Hochul is running for election in November, okay? Letitia James, the Attorney General, is running for re-election in November, and Letitia James served me with a notice of appeal, which means now they're going to try and overturn my win, which means now they want quarantine camps back. They want that power back. So it's really important that everybody go vote on November 8th and vote out people that don't appreciate the Constitution, don't appreciate basic human rights, and vote in or keep in place people like Andy Goodell, people like Senator Borrello, people like Assemblyman Tague, Assemblyman Waller, Giglio, because those are the people that are fighting every day for all of us. And they need our support in a big way. So it's not just us going to the polls. We have to bring friends and family and everybody, and we have to do it, and we have to turn out in huge numbers to defeat this insanity. So thank you all, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. Watch your heel, honey. Thank you.
Bobbie Anne.